9:59. If you're attending the Extending CRM using plugins and the CRM SDK effectively, you're at the right place. We'll start in about a minute or two. Oh, good morning, everyone. It just turned 10 o'clock. Welcome. In our run-throughs, we have 45 minutes of demo stuff to show you, so we're going to start right at 10. Basically, the agenda is going to be explaining what CRM and XRM is, some of the options available for business applications, and get right into the demo of how to extend CRM using plugins. So I want to welcome everybody. There's going to be a Q&A at the end, and if you have any questions during, put it in the chat box lower right, and we will get to the questions at the end. So basically, we're going to start by explaining what CRM briefly. CRM is a Microsoft Dynamics business application. It started with V1 in 2003, and it's grown on an average 40% annually. This phenomenal growth is due to many factors, but deployment options, ease of use, pricing are often reasons given, but also its use as XRM, which we'll talk about a little later, is huge. So Dynamics XRM is using this platform, CRM, as an extensible solution as a business line of business application. Microsoft built CRM from the ground up, realizing that sales and marketing staff require a flexible, configurable platform. Around the release of CRM 4.0, which was the fourth version of CRM, developers, business owners, and CIOs realized how extensible CRM was and began using CRM as XRM, extensible or anything relationship management, to replace and supplement line of business systems. One CIO at a large union said, building a custom app is like building a 10-story building. If I use XRM, I get the first 6 to 7 stories of the building already built. So you have, in the past, had two options when you have a line of business systems. You could buy off the shelf and configure and stretch it, or you could build from scratch. Today you have a third option, and that is XRM. When you consider the cost, which is the business application off the shelf, that obviously would be the least expensive. As the developer, whether it's Microsoft, Oracle, or Sage, will maintain the code and keep it current. Developing your own system obviously gives you exactly what you want, even though you don't have any licensing costs. Both initially and in the long run, it's quite expensive. The standard metric is 10 times what the development costs be over the life of the product. So consider XRM, what we're going to show you today, when you have unique requirements and determine what the costs are for you. In addition to creating custom code for CRM, as mentioned earlier, CRM is very configurable, so you can extend it using third-party code or create custom entities easily without any development costs. So the CRM SDK, the software development kit, is what we're going to show you today in a very, very high manner, as well as the development code around it. We're going to show you how to customize CRM, and the beauty of this is, and part of the value of using CRM as XRM, is allows your code to upgrade so that you don't have those big maintenance costs I mentioned earlier with custom development systems. This allows your code to upgrade with the CRM upgrades and keeping the long-term cost of maintaining your application down. So now we're going to get right into the demo part of doing CRM software development. Andrew Lally is extensively worked with CRM. He's one of the developers here, so take it away, Andrew.
Hello, everybody. So I'm going to start this off by showing you where you can download the plugin, if I can get my screen to switch here. All right. So Microsoft puts their SDK available online. It's free to download by anybody, so you don't need a specific login or account from them to be able to customize CRM. And then with that SDK, you get a bunch of useful tools. The most important things you get are, in fact, the DLLs that are needed to make custom plugins or custom workflows or just interact with CRM. So you have stuff like your Microsoft XRM SDK. This has in it your iPlugin interfaces that allow your uploaded plugins to be found by CRM and actually used. And similar, the workflow DLL contains references needed to make custom activities for your workflows. And I will show you both of those in two different instances and two different plugins. One of the most important applications that come with it is your actual plugin registration application. What this allows you to do is you can upload your DLL, which is your compiled custom plugins and activities. As you can see here, this is one that I'm going to demonstrate to you. This is the KTL CRM payment processing DLL. This has two different types of kind of plugins. You have your workflow activity. Your workflow activity allows you, as like an end user in workflow, to plug in custom compiled .NET code. This allows you to do things that normal workflows would never be able to do. And I will show you those instances here. And this is a normal plugin. This is something that you can't easily configure in CRM itself. You have to go through the plugin registration tool. That is about it. You can update your DLLs and add, or if you want, you can just very easily deactivate them without actually removing them. So if you want to test or you think it's causing issues with something else or another plugin, you can start turning ones off and trying to track down problems. So let me first start by describing one of the issues a client had. They had a very custom quote process and building process where they used a third-party tool to build quotes and orders and invoices. It didn't mesh well with CRM's current process. They had some issues where users could see products, stuff like that, and then the salespeople may accidentally delete a product as needed for another product in that quote to be even used. And then end users or clients would get just products that they couldn't use because required components were missing. And similarly, they were deleting the actual parent product and the children products weren't being deleted, which was leading to just pieces going that weren't needed either. So they're just getting extra stuff, extra bills, and more headaches for them to fix in the long run. So here's an instance where we have an order. In this case, all the top 4 products are child products in the computer case. The actual computer itself will be pretty useless without CD drive, processor, motherboard, and hard drive. And then alternatively, all of these will be pretty useless without a computer case for them to go in. So you see now, you can delete them. And we'll just let it happen. And now you're going to get somebody that doesn't have hard drives with their computer. So now it's almost useless to them. Let me show you how we go about fixing that with a plugin. So here is how you go about making a plugin. You have to create a solution and project inside Visual Studios. And you also have to import your references to all of the CRM SDK DLLs. And then once you have that, you have access to your iPlugin interface. And what this basically does is just tell CRM that this class here is a plugin and you can execute this. It also allows, when you upload it, it'll find it in the plugin registration tool and give you a list of all the available classes and methods that you can add steps to and apply into the pipeline. When you first create your plugin, there's a few things that you have to do just to get some basic services that are kind of necessary when building your plugin. One of the most useful is the eye tracing service. It doesn't really do much for you with interacting with CRM. It allows you to send messages that CRM will kind of log in the event that you do receive an error. Then you can pass it along to whoever made the plugin or pass it along to Microsoft or somebody, and they'd be able to tell you where the issue is happening. And it's happening in this plugin, and the last message we received was this. And it will allow you to go back to the code and kind of figure out what happened and where it failed. The next one is your actual context. This gives you all the good information about the current state of the pipeline. And as you'll see in the next plugin, this is actually extremely important to make sure that the plugin doesn't cause bigger errors within CRM. Your org service factory is actually just a factory to get your organization service, which is the object used to communicate with CRM. In my plugins, I use the early bound entities, which you can create by using the CRM service utility. That also comes with the SDK when you download that. It is under the bin folder in the SDK folder. So to start out, in this plugin, we have a custom class that's a CRM data service. What that is just kind of helper methods to check certain conditions in CRM. And then next, we want to check that we can even get the target parameter. This would be what's passed in. So in this case, when someone hits delete on the product, this target will be that product, and then here is the entity reference. We want to make sure we are getting what we expect, because if we get something totally different, errors can happen further down the line. And then right here, this is where the context kind of comes to be important. This is the Protect Children detail plugin. We want to protect the child from being deleting first. So this would be if the user actually went and hit delete on that product. So in this case, we have to check to see if either the overall parent was deleted, that would be, in our case, the Peter case, or if the quote, order, or invoice was deleted, we want to let those products be deleted still because they can't exist without it. So here we just kind of check to see if the parent context, which if you would delete the quote, would be a quote, and then would be a delete message. And we're checking to see if the message name is delete and the entity name is the containing entity. And in this case, the containing entity is just our entity minus the detail name. The CRM appends detail to the line items of, say, a quote, the quote detail, sales order, be sales order detail. So that's what this is. And then we also, for the child products, we have to check to see if this is being deleted because the parent product is being deleted. So if the quote isn't actually being deleted or the order isn't being deleted, we check to see if maybe the Peter case is being deleted. So here we check again if we're deleting, and if we're deleting the same entity type, and if we check to see if the service or the is parent detail function, which basically checks to see if the parent context being deleted is the parent of this context. And all that kind of goes in to allow the deletion to continue. If none of those are really true, you get down here and it kind of checks to see if the detail being deleted even has a parent. If it doesn't, we just go ahead and return. And then here's how we display a message to the user to let them know that you can't do this, but also give them an actual message that would mean something to them. We throw this invalid plugin execution exception, and we set the operation status to canceled, and we pass what we want to display to the user. And I will show you how that works, as well as show you how to enable it in the plugin administration tool. So before you saw me delete that product, and that was because before this webinar, I went in and disabled that step. So when you register your DLLs, it's this plugin administration utility, you will just get this line. You won't get the lines you see underneath. You have to go in and add steps to them. And what the steps are pretty much are just actions on entities that you kind of hook into. CRM calls them messages, but messages are just actions. Like you have your delete message, you have a create, a close, basically the action you play towards an entity, and then you can choose when you want to take place. The pre-validation is it will execute before you even know if the user is allowed to make that action. Pre-operation is after you know the user is allowed to do this, but before anything's written to the database. And then post-operation is after all of that, everything's written to the database, you're done, it is set in stone, and you can do something after that. And then your unsecure and secure configurations allow you to pass in data to your plugin. through a constructor. But as you can see in my case, I already made it, and I just disabled it to show you what the problem was. And so I will re-enable it and show you what it looks like now that it's enabled. Okay, so both the steps are now enabled again. If I go back to this order, it's still missing the hard drives, but that's okay for this test case. I can show you what happens if I try to delete, say, the processor. As you can see, at this point, we get the error that we want to display to the user. It says business process error, and then below that is this product is required by another product. Please delete the dependent product to automatically remove this product. This is a very easy way, very small plugin that allowed just to have some big errors that were happening. And now you see from the other plugin, I'll show you in a second, this is what happens when you delete a parent. It will go through and kind of find all the child products, and it will remove those as well, because we really don't want to be charging a customer and sending them things that they can't use because they don't have a computer case. So in this case, it just went ahead and removed the processor, the CD drive, and the motherboard, because without a computer case, in this case, it is useless to the end user. And let me just show you that one. It's equally as short as before. So this is the delete children detail plugin. Same things apply. We want to get the tracing service, the context, the org service, and the factory. This is what I was showing or saying before, where the context plays an important role here. In the event that someone does delete the actual whole quote or the whole sales order, you can't have your plugin go underneath of it and start deleting all the other ones. CRM kind of compiles a list of all the orders to delete, and then once all your plugins are done, it will shoot through and delete all of them. So like the first one to delete is a parent, and I delete all those children. When CRM's continuing its process and goes to delete one of those children, they won't exist. You'll get an error thrown on deleting that quote, and no one will be able to delete quotes. So here we do the check again to see if the parent context is a quote being deleted, a sales order being deleted, or an invoice being deleted. And if that is the case, we don't do anything because it will delete all the details for us. And then right here, we do the same thing as the last one. It's pretty much filler stuff that we need to make sure everything is correct before we get into actually removing things. And then here is just something I like to do, is to put in this little check to make sure we're on the correct entity. It just gives the administrator a little bit more concrete error. So if they do accidentally apply to something that this plugin shouldn't be applied to and would cause issues if it was applied to, they'll get a real error that's saying you shouldn't have done this or this is not allowed. And then once we know we're on the correct entity, what we do here is we want to get the children entities. This would be all the child products, like the processor, hard drive, like that. And then we want to delete the entities. And once all that is done, we can go ahead and return, and that is where we see everything is just gone after the plugin is deleted. And then I guess I can show you, these were those functions I was referring to, the service ones. So we have the get children entities, which depending on what entity we're on, we'll just get all the children ones based if the required detail equals that of the ID of the parent. And then furthermore, the delete entities will just shoot through all the entities provided and just mark them as deleted for CRM. So that's why you have your context, delete object, and you pass in entities. And then down here we just call save changes, and what that does is that commits everything to CRM and actually deletes things. This is just a simple check to check the parent detail. That's about it. But your end result is that you can't delete anything that is a child product, and deleting a parent product will also delete the children product. So no clients are getting messed up orders and complaining that they're billed for things they can't use anyway. And that is all I have for this plugin. I will take it back to Steve to explain the next part. Oh, what's just
okay. Andrew, that was great. So we had a business problem where a company was making kits and they had orders, and sometimes a child of the order would be deleted and the kit would go out incomplete, and sometimes people would delete the parent of the order, and there'd be some subcomponents that existed in the inventory that were thought to be not in inventory. That was a great plug-in demonstration, Andrew, of how to use CRM effectively for an order and order control around kits. That, however, is a plug-in that's all internal. When you compile the code and register it, it's all on the same server and everything else. What you see here now on the screen is a credit card external payment process. This ramps up the complexity in a whole new way, in that you're going to be doing internal things to CRM to do payment processing, but when you do a function call to the internet, you do have expected returns, and then, as we all know, you get timeouts and unexpected returns. So coding for this is quite a bit more complex, and Andrew's coded a payment process through CRM that allows for all of the authorization process to occur, as well as exception handling for the errors. Andrew, great job. Take it away.
All right. For this one, I was trying to explain the requirements that I had in my mind when I was making it. We wanted to be able to charge a credit card to an order or an invoice, and then you also wanted that credit card to still be PCI compliant. So we don't want any retaining credit card information that can actually pinpoint an actual credit card. And we want to guarantee that there's no way for that to happen, for anything to get actually saved to the database. So that's why you see here, the credit card number is 4242, but I did not actually put that credit card number in there with all the X's and all that stuff. That was done right before it went to the database. It was updated, but after it was authorized. And let me show you how that is done. This is the other one. So this is the payment processor solution. It's the same as the last one with the setup. You have your solution, the projects, and then we have our actual plugins. What's different about this one is there's also workflow activities. The same thing, it's pretty much just plugins, except you can't use them without going through the workflow. And what it allows is for the end user to actually kind of re-customize or use them as they see fit. And I'll show you a couple ways you can use these workflow activities. You don't have to use them as I have opened them now. So the first one I'll show you is the authorized credit card plugin. What this one should do is it should sit right before anything is submitted to the database to take the information supplied by the user. So all the credit card information, it should try to authorize it. And if it does authorize successfully, as you can see here, we're going to make the payment PCI compliant. And we do that by setting the credit card number to nothing but X's except for the last four numbers. We remove the credit card verification code. And that way, no one, if heaven forbid, gets access to our database, they can't really use a credit card to make purchases. So to start off, there's a couple things that can be done. Same thing as last plugin, it's pretty standard stuff that you have to do. You want to get your tracing service context, your org service factory, and you want to make sure that the data passed into your entity is the correct type and that someone didn't misconfigure it when they were installing your plugins. And right here, we just check to make sure that this is only being fired on the correct entity, that someone didn't register it with a different entity. It would just cause headaches down the line if we were trying to work on a different entity that we didn't know. And then here, we just create the service, and then we create our CRM context. The CRM context just lets you interact with CRM easier. You get auto-completion. You get compiler checks to make sure you're using the right entity properties and stuff like that. And you also get this nice little link to SQL or link to entity syntax here that makes just writing code easier, quicker, and more efficient. So here, what we want to do is start this plugin. Once we know we're on the right entity and everything is correctly filled out, we want to get a web resource, and this is the configuration file for the whole thing. And I'll show you how you configure and stuff like that when we go back to CRM. But the configuration file is just a flat JSON file that stores what payment provider you're using and any connection information you need for that payment provider. CRM stores all the web resources, basically encoded. So anytime you actually request one, you have to decode it and actually get the values. The payment adapter factory takes that information from the config file and creates your payment adapter. In the case of this demo, I chose to use Stripe. So in this case, it'll make the Stripe payment adapter, and I'll show you that one. Once we have our payment adapter and all that worked well, we want to create our mapper. The mappers are just helper functions that take a CRM entity and map them to different objects. It's a payment object. That is so that CRM objects can communicate with Stripe objects without having to redesign both whole systems to work. So here we do that, and then right here is where we actually authorize the credit card. There's a lot of stuff that can go wrong with that, and that is why you see here there's multiple catch statements. We could have a credit card exception, which would be something like your credit card number's wrong, your verification code didn't exist or match correctly, the credit card is expired. If you have address verification on, maybe the address didn't verify as the correct billing address. But here is the actual code to capture and authorize credit cards. Very simple call. We use the Stripe DLL for that. So there wasn't much code to write for the actual Stripe interaction, but we still had to map our objects to theirs. And that's what you see here. So we have another mapper that'll map our intermediate charge to the Stripe object, and then we create the payment and we map back. And all this mapping does is make sure we don't have to rewrite the wheel to get things to communicate. So that is your authorized. When doing a plugin that has outside DLLs, there are some issues you have to take into account. One of them is that you can only upload a single DLL at a time to CRM, and it will load it. So unless you have access to the bin folder or something like that, which you don't when you do CRM Online, you have to somehow get all of your external DLLs and your DLL all into one DLL. There is a nice tool for that called IL Merge, and I'll show you that after everything is done being built. In order to make it one single DLL that I upload, I had to create a build event and use the IL Merge tool, and what that does is just merges everything into a single DLL. And then also, if you are doing like a sandbox or CRM Online, stuff like that, you have to use sandbox. You have to sign your DLL. That's be strongly signed. So down here, we're actually signing it. That way, CRM will take it and won't give us errors if we upload. So let me show you what the actual authorized part would look like. Let me go back to a different order that actually has stuff in it. So this is a test order with just random stuff in it for the demonstration. All right, and then down here, we added the credit card payment entity to an order and an invoice entity simply by adding a lookup in the credit card payment entity itself. So what this allows you to do is very easily add this grid into your order or your invoice. If you really wanted to and hook it up to a quote, you could yourself go in and give it a lookup to a quote and then just add this grid. This is very easily added through the form editor. You would just add an inline grid to it, and CRM would take care of actually doing all of this, where you can make a new one and stuff like that. And then I will show you the actual char or capture here. So this will be your CRM credit card entity form. And you give it a name. This can be anything you want. It's not really used. It's required by CRM to have a primary entity property that is a string. So here is a test credit card for authorized.net or Stripe, and it is, I believe, Discover or Visa, one of those two. So the credit card expiration is an actual full date time to make it easy, and CRM picks it up itself. To do this, only the month and year is actually used. So you can select any date, and it'll just disregard 13 in this case. For the testing one, the credit card verification can be anything you want, and then I'll just go ahead and make this $150 charged. As you can see, because I hit new in that grid on the order, the test order is already applied to the order applied to. This is just the lookup I was referring to before. In my case, the address verification and stuff like that isn't actually enabled in Stripe, so you don't need billing address information. If you did do that, you can very easily customize this so that address line 1, 2, city, state, postcode, country are all required fields, and then your end user could not submit and save this form until those are filled out. As you can see now, after it's saved and all that stuff, an entry was added down here, but also more importantly, the credit card number was blanked out pretty much. You just have your X's and your 4242, which are the last 4 digits. This is done in the plugin. You could kind of do this in a workflow activity as well. In my judgment, I wouldn't, because you don't want to give someone the possibility to change it or do something to it that stops it from doing its job to be PCI compliant. It could cause headaches later. And you could possibly do this as well all through JavaScript on the form, and then have that change the credit card number to all the X's and 4242. But again, I wouldn't advise that. If you have an outside process that wanted to charge cards, if you kept it as a plugin, that outside process, all it would have to do is call CRM to create a credit card entity, and then now you have some different processes, different applications that are able to charge credit cards onto your merchant account only using their CRM login and password. They don't have to know anything about what merchant account you're using, your merchant account secret key, and stuff like that. This is all done. So that is the benefit of using the plugin over the alternative methods. So now that you got your credit card actually authorized, it hasn't actually been captured yet. This is the part where the workflow activities, I made them that way because it allows more flexibility in the end for the users. These are shown down here. So I'll show you the capture credit card. Same thing for everything else with the context. So I'll just skip over that. And same thing where we have to get the configuration file so we know what payment merchant we're using and the actual configuration information, your keys and passwords, just like that. And then here we do the same thing. We just call the adapter for the capture payment method. And it does pretty similar to the above. It calls the Stripe charge service and tries to capture. If it's successful, it returns back the mapped information. The interesting thing here is the call with exception handling. This is what kind of takes care of some major issues you could have with contacting outside services because, again, this is over the internet. There's a ton of things that can go wrong. If you have a socket error and you can't actually make an outgoing connection, something went wrong with your Ethernet card, maybe you have just an HTTP exception because something wasn't formatted right or something got corrupted on the way. Or you have permissions errors because the user it's running under isn't allowed to make outgoing connections. You also have the Stripe exceptions where you can have your invalid request error. This shouldn't happen if it's tested well, but it very well could if they change their API later on and don't let you know, or if it actually gets so old, not updated, that no one has gone in and upgraded to the newest API, and now they discontinued the old one. Or you have your card error, which is your standard errors with the credit card number being wrong, the verification code not matching, or your address being incorrect. And then, heaven forbid, you have something that just wasn't thought of, and you have your unknown exceptions. Once you have all that, this now lets you capture your credit card. Now, this is a workflow, so it takes a few more clicks to actually run. But the long-run benefit you get in customizing it is worth it. And if you really wanted to, you could have someone create a button and some JavaScript that would execute that workflow for you. So we don't want to refund, we want to capture. So let me show you the actual purchase so you believe when I say it was actually charged, all that stuff. So here's the $150 charge that we made. If I come back in here and tell it to run the captured credit card payment workflow, we tell it, okay, this was the extra clicks I was talking about. You have to actually look it up, click it, and tell it to run. Now, if we go back to our order, when our payments load, you'll see that the status has changed to captured. So now our transaction status is captured, and once I reload this, you'll see in Stripe it is marked as captured as well. I have to open it up to see that. So now, and Stripe calls it paid. But down here you see an event, a charge for 150 was captured, and you can see here's where our authorization was created as well. That is very simple how you actually capture. And this I'm going to show you, and let me switch to Safari. I'm just using Windows 10 with their newest IE browser, and it doesn't play well with some of the features in CRM. So here is this is your capture credit card payment workflow that I just showed you and that we just did. All this does is it calls that workflow activity that I showed you the code for, and it passes in the credit card payment entity you want to charge. And then after that returns that successful, it will update the status to captured. Because this is a workflow activity, you could modify this to be anywhere. Say you don't want the user to have to hit capture. You want to just, right after authorization, if it's successful, you just want to capture. You could very easily come in here and make a new workflow and set the start when a record is created. And then you set it like after, and then once you have all that, you can plug in right here. It would look identical, except you would have stuff up here selected. You would have your KTL CRM payment processing, and you would have the same properties selected to pass in. I'll show you that once it loads, to pass in your credit card payment that you're currently on. And that will let you just capture immediately after it's been authorized and saved to the database. And the same thing goes if you wanted to have it capture payments when it's converted to an invoice, or capture payments when you mark an invoice as one, or invoice is paid in full. It could just shoot down and capture all the payments that are associated with it. It's very customizable this way and lets you do pretty much whatever you want. So there's another workflow, and it uses another kind of workflow activity. And that is the refund credit card. It operates in the exact same way as the other one. You would come in here. Oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry about that. You would come to your credit card and open it up. The same thing would take place as you saw when I ran the other workflow. If you hit the Run Workflow button, you have your refund credit card workflow. And that is very simple. All it does is it takes your credit card entity. There's a hidden transaction ID field that doesn't get displayed to the user, but it uses that to go up to the merchant account and tell it, we need this to be refunded. And so when I reload this, it should show you this is no longer paid, but has been refunded. As you can see, the status is refunded. This is just like the capture, a very simple workflow activity. So here it is as well. Once you get all of the standard CRM plugin code up here, once that is done, there's really not too much to it. You just call the function. If it's successful, great. If not, then you want to throw the invalid plugin execution exception. That way your end user, or in this case, an administrator or somebody, can look at that workflow's errors and see, oh, this was not refunded because maybe it's too old, or someone changed or updated your merchant information and messed up your keys and passwords. That is just your simple workflows. Let me think, is there anything else in here? No, that is about it. To make this more configurable to the end user, and so you don't have to do a whole lot of jumping through hoops to update things, there was some configuration screens made. So through the configuration screen, let's pull back up, you can kind of give an administrator an area where they can configure a plugin without having to go where users are, and a user would be able to see this area. Open down here. So click this. It actually opens up a nice little configuration screen where you can select your merchant account, and it will change over here based on that, and just let you set the required information for your connection. That is pretty much all it takes to create the plugins. Depending on what you need, it could be a very simple plugin that takes a couple hours, or a very complex integration plugin that connects two systems that can take a little bit longer and require a lot more testing, and that could take a while, but for the most part, the actual effort involved with plugins varies widely. I believe that is all I have for the plugins. Steve, let's jump back in and take questions.
Go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. I didn't see any questions there. If you have any, go ahead and ask them now. I think the line is open, so you can ask them either voice or by using the chat box in the lower right-hand corner. While waiting for questions, I want to thank everybody for attending. Andrew, that was fabulous. I know you went through a lot, and I know it's quite extensive when you look at the code, but you're right. Using plugins effectively really can extend CRM, and under the SDK, particularly when you use the workflow in conjunction with that, makes CRM really, really effective.
Yeah.
For those of you that are still with us, our next webinar is September 15th. It's a business intelligence webinar showing Excel, Power Pivot, and the Power BI tools. Hope you can join us for that. And I still don't see any questions, so with that, we'll end it. Thank you, everybody.
All right.